I came home to find the mortgage statement on my kitchen counter. Another $3,000 due next week. For 8 years I had been paying half of my parents' mortgage without complaint on top of their medical bills and vacations. That all changed the day I found their will while organizing their tax documents. Every asset, every penny, every family heirloom was going to my younger brother Jackson. My name appeared only in a small paragraph about personal belongings. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could. Before I tell you how I discovered my family's greatest betrayal, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt taken for granted by the people you love most. The financial support I provided to my parents started small. A grocery bill here, a utility payment there. Before I knew it, I was handling half their mortgage medical expenses and even financing family vacations to Florida every winter. As a software engineer at 35, I had built a stable career that allowed this generosity. But it came with sacrifices. 3 times I passed on promotions that would have required relocation. My savings account reflected years of prioritizing their needs above my own financial security. Mom and Dad Thomas and Patricia Henderson had always described us as a tight-knit family. Sunday dinners were mandatory holiday celebrations. Elaborate and family photos adorned every wall of their suburban home. The 4-bedroom house where I grew up stood as a monument to what they called unbreakable family bonds. My relationship with my younger brother Jackson told a different story. 4 years my junior at 31, he had bounced between failed business ventures with alarming regularity. The organic juice bar lasted 6 months before bankruptcy. The mobile detailing service collapsed when he gambled away the equipment fund. Most recently, his cryptocurrency investments vaporized during a market crash. Through each disaster, our parents rushed to his defense. Jackson has an entrepreneurial spirit. Dad would insist while writing another check to cover my brother's rent. He just needs more time to find his path, Mom would add, serving him extra portions at dinner while recounting his latest business idea with undeserved enthusiasm. The discovery that changed everything happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Tax season had arrived, and my father, never organized with paperwork, had asked for my help sorting through their financial documents. Their home office resembled a paper hurricane with statements and receipts scattered across every surface. Just help me get everything in order for the accountant, Dad had said, leaving me alone with the chaotic piles. 3 hours into the sorting process, I opened a folder labeled Family Documents, expecting to find birth certificates or insurance policies. Instead, my eyes landed on legal papers dated just 2 months earlier. The formal heading read Last Will and Testament of Thomas and Patricia Henderson. Curiosity, rather than suspicion, prompted me to scan the document. The first page contained standard legal language about being of sound mind and body. I flipped to the second page, and that's when my world tilted sideways. We hereby bequeath our primary residence at 1422 Maple Avenue, along with all associated equity, to our son Jackson Thomas Henderson. I read the line twice, certain I had misunderstood. I continued reading, my heart rate accelerating with each paragraph. All financial accounts, investments, and insurance policies shall be transferred in their entirety to our son Jackson Thomas Henderson. Family heirlooms, including but not limited to jewelry, artwork, and antique furniture, shall become the sole property of our son, Jackson Thomas Henderson. My name appeared only in a brief paragraph near the end. Personal belongings such as photographs, books, and mementos may be selected by our son, Armand James Henderson, following the execution of this will. Photos and trinkets. After 8 years of financial support, after dedicating my adult life to ensuring their comfort and security, my stomach dropped to my feet. My hands trembled so violently that the paper rustled audibly in the quiet room. I carefully returned the will to its folder, continuing to organize documents on autopilot while my mind raced. When my parents returned an hour later, I forced a casual smile and made an excuse about an early meeting the next day. The drive home passed in a blur. The same questions repeated in an endless loop. Had they ever valued my sacrifices? Had they always intended to leave everything to Jackson? Why maintain the pretense of equal love while planning such an unequal legacy? That night's sleep evaded. Me entirely. I stared at my ceiling, mentally cataloging years of financial support, family dinners, where Jackson received subtle preferential treatment, and the dozens of times my parents had called for emergency assistance that I unfailingly provided. The pattern emerged with painful clarity. I was their reliable financial safety net, not their favored son. 7 days passed in a fog of confusion and hurt. Each morning, I mechanically performed my work duties, earning money that had partially funded my parents' lifestyle. Each evening, I reviewed memories with new clarity, identifying countless instances of subtle favoritism toward Jackson. The time Dad proudly displayed Jackson's mediocre high school basketball trophy, but forgot to attend my college graduation. The Christmas Mom gave Jackson a new laptop while I received a sweater. The family vacation photos where Jackson always stood between our parents. On Thursday, I called my closest friend Damon, who had witnessed my relationship with my family for over 20 years. I always thought something seemed off with how they treated you two, Damon admitted, after I explained the situation. Remember when you got that promotion 3 years ago, and they spent the entire celebration dinner talking about Jackson's new business idea? I justified it by thinking they were trying to include him, since he was struggling, I replied, the memory now tainted with new understanding. No, man. They did that all the time. I just never said anything because, well, they're your parents. His perspective strengthened my resolve to address the situation directly. I arranged to join the regular Sunday family dinner, arriving with a carefully planned approach rather than raw emotion. The familiar aromas of pot roast and apple pie filled my parents' home as I entered. Mom hugged me as usual, commenting on my tired appearance. Dad clapped my shoulder before returning to the football game on television. Jackson had not yet arrived, perpetually late as always without consequence. We made small talk through the first course, discussing neighborhood news and Dad's golf game. As Mom served the main course, I carefully steered the conversation toward estate planning. I was helping organize the tax documents last week, and couldn't help but notice you've updated your will recently, I said, keeping my voice neutral despite my pounding heart. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Dad's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Their eyes met briefly before focusing back on me. You shouldn't have been looking through private documents, Dad said, his tone immediately defensive. I wasn't snooping. It was in the folder you asked me to organize, I replied, maintaining composure. I'm just curious about the decisions you've made. Mom set down her utensils and sighed. Armand, we need to ensure Jackson has security after we're gone. You understand that, right? Security that I've been providing to all of you for nearly a decade, I countered. While receiving nothing in return, Dad's face flushed. Nothing. We gave you life, education, and opportunities. You've built a successful career. Jackson needs more support. Support I've been giving by paying your bills, I said. Did it ever occur to you that I might need security too? Or that dividing things equally would acknowledge both of your sons? You've always been self-sufficient, Armand Mom said, the words striking like physical blows. Jackson struggles. He always has. He struggles because you've never required him to be responsible. I replied my carefully planned approach, dissolving as years of unspoken resentment surfaced. You've enabled his poor choices while taking my stability for granted. Dad pushed his plate away. This is our decision, and it's final. We love you both, but Jackson needs the inheritance more. You're already successful, so I'm being punished for my hard work while he's rewarded for his failures. I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to remain calm. No one is being punished, Mom insisted. We've always worried more about Jackson. You've always been our rock. Your rock and your bank, I added bitterly. The person who pays your bills while getting nothing but platitudes in return. Dad stood abruptly. That's enough. This is our money and our choice. If you only help us to get something in return, then perhaps you should stop. The challenge hung in the air between us. In that moment, I saw clearly that they genuinely believed I should continue supporting them financially while accepting their decision to leave everything to my brother. The extent of their entitled expectations staggered me. This is our decision, And it's final. Dad repeated his tone, dismissing any further discussion. I placed my napkin beside my half-eaten dinner and stood. Thank you for clarifying where I stand in this family. I drove home in a state of cold clarity, decades of family dynamics crystallizing into painful understanding. The car that normally took me to their house for emergency repairs, middle-of-the-night hospital visits, and countless acts of financial assistance now carried me away from the illusion of equal love. The next morning I called my best friend Marcus, who worked in financial planning. "They're taking advantage of you," he said flatly, after hearing the full story. Family means support goes both ways. That afternoon I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Inslee. Harrison, the therapist I had seen briefly after a difficult breakup years earlier. "What you're describing is a profound breach of trust," she observed during our session. "Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for your emotional health." Over the next 2 days, I created a detailed financial separation plan. I cataloged every bill I paid, every account where my name appeared alongside theirs, and every recurring expense I had absorbed. The spreadsheet revealed I had contributed over $140,000 to their household in the past 5 years alone. With clinical detachment, I drafted an email explaining my decision to end all financial support effective immediately. I outlined the reasoning without accusation or emotion, stating only facts I had discovered their will. I understood their choice to favor Jackson, and I was now choosing to prioritize my own financial security, since they had made it clear I should expect nothing from them in return. I sent the email on a Wednesday morning, then turned off my phone. The aftermath arrived with the swift intensity of a summer storm. When I finally checked my phone that evening, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. My parents expressed shock and hurt, as though my withdrawal of financial support was entirely unexpected, rather than the natural consequence of their actions. "How could you abandon us like this?" Mom's first voicemail demanded, her voice trembling with indignation. "After everything we've done for you, this is completely irresponsible," Dad's message declared. "We're counting on your contribution for the mortgage payment next week." Jackson's messages escalated from confusion to rage in the span of hours. "What the hell is wrong with you?" his final voicemail snarled. "They're our parents. You can't just cut them off because you're jealous of me." I responded with a brief text. "I'm not cutting them off. I'm allowing them to rely on their chosen heir for support." The first missed mortgage payment triggered a warning letter from the bank. My phone rang continuously for 3 days before I finally answered a call from my mother. "The bank says we might lose our home," she said, attempting to sound vulnerable rather than manipulative. "You know we can't afford the full payment on our own." "I understand this is difficult," I replied calmly. "Have you asked Jackson to help?" "He's between ventures right now," she said, the familiar excuse sounding hollow. "You know he would help if he could. And you know I've helped for years, even when it was difficult for me," I countered. "But I won't continue to fund a household that doesn't value my contributions." The family vacation to Florida was canceled the following week. Then came the $600 car repair bill they couldn't cover. Each financial reality hit with increasing impact as they faced the actual cost of the lifestyle I had been subsidizing. The ripple effects spread throughout our extended family. Aunt Sylvia called to express her disappointment in my abandonment of my parents. Uncle Paul, however, sent a private text. "About time you stood up for yourself. They've been taking advantage of your good nature for years." 3 weeks after my decision, the family gathered for my cousin's wedding. I arrived alone and maintained polite distance from my immediate family. Nevertheless, I overheard multiple conversations where I was portrayed as selfish and cruel. After everything Thomas and Patricia did for those boys, my grandmother told another relative, unaware I stood nearby. Now Armand refuses to help them when they need it most. How did we raise such a selfish generation? The characterization stung, but I maintained my resolve. The foundation of our relationship had been revealed as transactional rather than loving, and no amount of family pressure could convince me to resume the one-sided arrangement. Exactly 1 month after I discovered the will, my phone displayed a text message from my mother. "The mortgage is due. No greeting, no recognition of the relationship strain." Just the expectation that I would fulfill my usual financial obligation despite everything that had transpired. I typed a simple reply, "Ask Jackson. Everything goes to him. Remember?" Dad called within minutes, his voice thundering through the speaker. "How dare you speak to your mother that way? We gave you life, raised you, sacrificed for you. And I've repaid those sacrifices many times over," I interrupted calmly. "I've contributed more to your household than Jackson ever has, yet you've decided he deserves everything. I'm simply respecting your choice by allowing him to assume the responsibility that comes with being your chosen beneficiary." "We could lose our home," he said, his anger giving way to genuine fear. "I understand that's difficult," I replied. "But your financial security isn't solely my responsibility, especially when you've made it clear that I'm not an equal part of this family. If you continue this, you might not be part of this family at all." He threatened desperation, evident in his tone. "That's your choice to make." I answered before ending the call. The unexpected twist arrived 3 days later when my mother called again, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "We asked Jackson to help with the mortgage payment," she admitted quietly, and I prompted when she fell silent. "He said he can't." "He also said—" Her voice faltered. "He said we should have expected this when we decided to rely on you, instead of teaching him responsibility." The irony might have been satisfying if not for the genuine pain in her voice. "We made a mistake, Armand," she continued. "A terrible mistake." Dad wouldn't come to the phone directly, but I heard him in the background, asking for the call to be placed on speaker. His pride prevented a direct apology, but his gruff suggestion that we should discuss this situation as a family represented the closest admission of error I expected from him. The following Saturday, I arrived at my parents' home for the requested family meeting. The atmosphere inside crackled with tension. Mom had prepared my favorite meal, lasagna with garlic bread, an obvious attempt at reconciliation. Dad sat stiffly at the head of the table, his expression a complex mixture of pride and regret. The empty chair where Jackson should have been spoke volumes about his commitment to family responsibility. "Jackson couldn't make it," Mom explained, unnecessarily as she served the food. "He had an important business meeting." On a Saturday evening, I asked, raising an eyebrow. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. He said he'd try to stop by later. We all knew he wouldn't appear. The first uncomfortable silence stretched until Dad finally spoke. "Your mother and I have been talking," he began, choosing his words carefully, "about our will and our expectations of you." Mom reached for his hand before continuing. "We realize now that we've been unfair to you, Armand. For years we've relied on your generosity while planning to leave everything to Jackson. We convinced ourselves it was the right decision," Dad added, "that you were successful enough not to need our assets while Jackson needed the security. What we failed to consider," Mom said, her eyes glistening, "was how that decision devalued everything you've done for us." Dad pulled a document from a folder beside his plate. "We've spoken to our lawyer. We're changing the will to split everything equally between you and your brother." I sat quietly absorbing their words. The offer represented the equal treatment I had sought, yet something deeper remained unaddressed. "It's not about the money," I finally said. "It never was." They exchanged confused glances. "Then what is this all about?" Dad asked. "Respect," I replied simply. "Recognition. Appreciation for the sacrifices I've made. The will was just the physical evidence of how you truly see me, as the reliable son who needs nothing in return, not even acknowledgement." Mom's tears spilled over. "We do appreciate you, Armand. More than we've shown. We took you for granted," Dad admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. "We expected you would always be there to help, no matter how we treated you." The conversation stretched for hours, painful but necessary. Decades of family dynamics were examined, patterns of favoritism acknowledged, and unspoken expectations brought to light. For perhaps the first time, my parents truly listened to my perspective without defensiveness. I outlined my conditions for rebuilding our relationship: family counseling, transparent financial discussions, and most importantly, equal treatment. Not just in legal documents, but in daily interactions and expectations. And no more financial support until we've established a healthier relationship, I added firmly. though clearly uncomfortable with the boundary they agreed. The following weeks brought significant changes. Dr. Wallace, a family therapist specializing in adult family dynamics, facilitated difficult but productive sessions where my parents confronted their enabling behaviors toward Jackson and their exploitation of my reliability. You've created a dynamic where one son never had to grow up, while the other was never allowed to be vulnerable, she observed during our third session. My personal therapy continued alongside the family sessions. Through this work, I recognized my own role in maintaining the unhealthy dynamic by never setting boundaries and seeking validation through financial assistance. New friendships emerged as I reclaimed time and resources previously dedicated to my parents' needs. Weekend hiking expeditions with a meetup group introduced me to Eliza, an environmental lawyer whose direct communication style helped reinforce my newfound appreciation for honesty in relationships. My career advanced when I finally accepted a promotion that required occasional travel. The additional income went into my own retirement account rather than my parents' expenses. I purchased a small but modern condo that reflected my personal taste, rather than family expectations. The most surprising development came 6 months after our confrontation, when Jackson secured stable employment for the first time in his adult life. Having mom and dad's support network suddenly unavailable was the wake-up call he needed, Eliza observed when I shared this news. 1 year after discovering the will, our family gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' home. The mortgage was current, paid by them without my assistance. Jackson arrived on time with his new girlfriend and a pumpkin pie he had baked himself. Dad asked about my recent work project with genuine interest without comparing it to any of Jackson's endeavors. The revised will sat in my parents' filing cabinet, splitting their assets equally between their sons. More meaningful than the document itself was what it represented: recognition that love without respect is merely manipulation, and that helping others should never require sacrificing your self-worth. I had discovered that sometimes losing everything in a will can help you gain something far more valuable: genuine family relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. The crisis had revealed each family member's true character and ultimately strengthened bonds that might otherwise have fractured beyond repair. As we enjoy our family dinner these days, with everyone contributing equally to both the meal and the conversation, I often reflect on the journey that brought us here. Some relationships are worth fighting for, even when that fight means temporarily stepping back to establish healthy boundaries. The question I still ponder is how to distinguish between relationships that can heal with proper boundaries and those that should be left behind entirely. What do you think? Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. Thanks for listening to my story today, and remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is having the courage to stand your ground.